This episode of History Saver is brought to you by Addressing Gettysburg. Addressing Gettysburg is a podcast that shares great experiences, quality programs, awesome guests, and is a welcoming community for all who love Gettysburg. So join in with host Matt Callery and find out why Addressing Gettysburg is one of the top-rated podcasts online today. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Podbean, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, right here on YouTube. So check out Addressing Gettysburg today, where history is not boring. Thank you to Addressing Gettysburg for sponsoring this video.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
We are just outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and today we have come to Thompson Park on Sullivan's Island, the site of the Battle of Sullivan's Island in June of 1776. One of the most decisive battles of the American Revolution took place right where I'm standing and in the waters right behind me of the Atlantic Ocean here just off the coast of Charleston. This place was almost lost to history, but luckily it wasn't. And not a lot of people even know about the battle that took place here at now Thompson Park and Sullivan's Island, South Carolina. So there is just a few placards here of literature that you can actually come and read. We're going to check those out, talk a little bit about the history of this battle. It's a long and drawn out history, so we can't hit on everything, but we're going to give you the brief rundown about what happens here and what this battle does during the American Revolution. All right, so here on Sullivan's Island, it's a pretty popular place today for people to come out, enjoy the sunset, enjoy the water. But in June of 1776, the scene here was a little bit different, as this was the site of a fortification of palmetto logs placed here by the Continental Army in June 1776 in defense of the city of Charlestown against the British. If you come here today, right now there are 4 historical placards here, a historical marker to my left, and this is really all that remains talking about the battle here in Sullivan's Island. But they do have some interpretive plaques, and one of these gives you an idea of what it may have looked like and where everything here actually was. And where we're standing at is right in this area right here. You have Fort Sullivan right here, where Colonel William Moultrie is in command with 435 Americans, and they defend that fort. But where we are right now, you have Colonel William Thompson, and he has 780 troops, somewhere in that number. According to what accounts you read, that number fluctuates. But here they're saying 780 troops to defend, so we'll go with that. They're defending against the British on Long Island. And then you have some British flatboats that are coming in Green Island here in the sandbars, and you also have British troops that are pushing from this area kind of close to Mount Pleasant. And they're pushing through a 7 feet deep at low water little inlet. Now, there was, at this time, different reports to the British commanders about how deep this actually was. So there was a lot of confusion about it, and when he ends up getting there, instead of having a little bit more dry land than he thought, well, it ends up being 7 foot deep. And that's going to create some problems with the British. Now, just opposite of where we are right now is a British camp in that position. And there you have Generals Clinton, Cornwallis, and Vine. And they have 3,000 British troops that are occupying Long Island, which is now known as the Isle of Palms. So if you come to the Charleston area today and you see a sign that says Isle of Palms, this is where that British camp was. So here at the Breach Inlet in June of 1776, Colonel William Danger Thompson repelled a British attempt to capture an unfinished Fort Sullivan by land. The British planned to coordinate a land and sea assault to establish a base of operations for taking their ultimate prize, which was Charlestown. Today, we've dumbed it down to Charleston. I don't know why that is. If anybody in the comments knows, please let me know. I don't know if it's we got lazy and just dumbed it down from Charlestown to Charleston. So I don't know. It's kind of weird how that works. But troops up under Colonel Thompson, who was a civic and military leader from South Carolina, from the backcountry of South Carolina, opposed the British land forces camped on Log Island. British Major General Henry Clinton and Lord Charles Cornwallis of the British intended to cross this inlet that you see here, and they wanted to march to the other end of Sullivan's Islands and storm the fortification right here from the rear, while British warships bombarded the fort from the harbor in the front. So then you have kind of a coup de main attack taking place. Land assaults going on while you have British Navy out here bombarding that fort at the same time. That would basically sandwich the Continental forces into a retreat or surrender. Now, the success of the Patriot defenses at the Breach Inlet here and at Fort Sullivan was a major setback for the British efforts to stifle American independence. And Continental Congress said this on July the 20th, 1776. Resolved that the thanks of the United States of America be given to Major General Lee and Colonel William Moultrie, Colonel William Thompson, and the officers and soldiers under their commands who on the 28th of June last repulsed with so much valor their attack was made on the state of South Carolina by fleet and army of the British Majesty. Well, there's a couple of reasons why the attack here at Fort Sullivan is going to be successful. And one of those was something that Lee himself thought was dumb. And that is what you see right here in front of me, palmetto logs. He called them flimsy, unworthy to withstand enemy fire, and he just didn't think they were the best thing to use for the fortification. Well, looks can be deceiving, and that's exactly what was deceiving about these palmetto logs. They ended up helping repel the British attacks. One, because the British ships here was driven by pilot ships. That way they didn't run aground. They knew how many hundreds of yards they could get here to bombard this position. Well, the pilot ships were driven by African-American locals who, and it's been debated over time whether they did that purposely, whether they drove those ships further back than what they could get in here so that the British guns couldn't reach the fortification as well. So it's been debated over time whether that was done purposely by them or not, because they were locals here to Charlestown. So that helps. But the palmetto logs, as these naval guns from the British are firing and sending grape shot and solid shot here, are acting like sponges. They're absorbing all of this shot and absorbing the impact, which helps the Continental Army in this position. They're unscathed. And as a matter of fact, Moultrie writes when he gets here to check on the situation that they are cool and calm. The guys here are just as happy as they can be other than being shelled. And you have Native American tribes here from the Catawba tribes gathering up with the Continental forces here. And you have Rangers of Thompson's 3rd Regiment from the backcountry here. And they were war caps inscribed with "Give me liberty or death." And then you have South Carolina militia here. And then the British soldiers were from places like Canada, Ireland, and of course England. And they were having problems alone by the heat and humidity here in South Carolina in June. So that is some other factors that kind of helped the Continental Army win the battle here. So this took 10 days of skirmishing on the beaches, creeks, and marshes. And these 10 days climaxed on the 20th of June, 1776, as the British attempted to cross this breach inlet you see right in front of me. Colonel William Danger Thompson and the 780 American Patriots had dug trenches here, and they erected 2 fortifications of palmetto logs to protect this position of Sullivan's Island. And we are right now near their first line of defense, which was somewhere in this area. We're not exactly sure. After extensive scouting, maneuvering, and fighting, the British generals realized that crossing the treacherous, well-defended inlet would be dangerous. Nonetheless, they sent hundreds of men and 15 armed flatboats across the inlet, supported by warships, artillery, and infantry. The Americans repelled the attack and defeated the British army of 3,000 men. And another fact that a lot of people miss out on is the royal governor of South Carolina at the time had volunteered to go on one of the British warships and become a sailor on the deck. Well, he took a splinter in the leg and died in England a short time later. Now, the commander himself of one of the British warships literally had his pants shot away and was running bare butt naked around the British warship on which he was commanding right in front of us. So even their commander literally lost his trousers and was bare naked on the warship because his clothes have been shot away. So there's a lot of cool little stories that come out of this place, and General George Washington himself is really happy with how the Continental Forces do in this location. And this is one of the most important sites of the American Revolutionary War and the Southern Campaign in the United States. People know about Yorktown. They know about the Concord and Philadelphia events and Lexington, but they miss Charlestown. And this is one of the most important and pivotal battles of the entire American Revolution right here at the Battle for Sullivan's Island. All right, so now you know a little bit of history about the Battle of Sullivan's Island and a lot of history that is lost and people often forget about. So with that being said, we're gonna get out of here, continue to the next place, and this is Sullivan's Island. So come visit it and enjoy it for yourself.